How many people do we have, Jennifer?
We have a quorum. We don't have council members Gregory, Waring, Griffin, or Saccharin on the line. And we don't have the mayor. So we're just waiting on them right now.
Okay.
I'll go let the mayor know you're waiting on him.
Howdy, everyone. I'm here. Sorry I'm a little late. I was doing a little advocacy for one of our grant applications. All right. So, you know, Amy, I don't know that I have an agenda for the meeting. I guess I'll, if you'll, there we go. Now we got an agenda. Thank you. I'll call this meeting to order. This is a workshop meeting of all of council, I guess, for the record. Madam Clerk, if you'd call the roll and just see who's on board of council members, that'd be great.
Okay. Councilwoman Del Chapo.
Here.
Councilmember Shealy.
Here.
Councilmember Saccharin. Okay. Councilmember Mitchell.
Here.
Councilmember Brady.
Present.
Councilmember Gregory. Okay. Councilmember Waring. Councilmember Seekings.
Here.
Councilmember Shea.
Present.
Councilmember Griffin. Councilmember Appel.
Here.
Councilwoman Jackson. Mayor Tecklenburg.
Here.
Here.
Okay.
So, and I'll ask you to just join me for a moment of silent prayer. Let's remember the families of those and those who've been lost to the coronavirus, now over 130,000 citizens of the United States. Amen. Thank you very much. So we've got an update for you. Amy does of our budget, both how we've been performing year to date through May, and then latest numbers on our projected both revenue shortfall and but expenditure savings as well. So without further ado, I'm going to just turn this over to Amy for a presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
It's a little low, Amy.
Okay, I don't know. I can fix
Just
that.
getting a little closer to the computer, I think helps.
Is that better?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. This will be repeat for the ad hoc members, some of it anyway, or most of it probably, so I apologize. But just to go over our monthly reports for May, where we are right now. And I'm sending these to all of you so that you'll have them as well. Revenues, we're starting to see the effects of COVID-19. Interest income is below target. Sales and everything I have highlighted there, you can see is where we're having some issues with COVID-19, except for franchise fees, which we talked about a couple months ago. Any questions? And then enterprise fund revenues, we're seeing, obviously, we were closed for 2 months. So we're obviously well under budget for those funds. We have seen our visitor numbers steadily increase since we reopened on May 28th, with Angel Oak being the highest number of visitors so far. Expenditures, we are under budget and overall in expenditures. We expected to see some savings from us being shut down for 2 months. Some of it was timing too with invoices, but I think that's not the issue anymore. It's still slower than normal in most areas with us being closed to the public, but we should continue to see some small savings. We do have some additional unbudgeted expenses due to COVID-19, which I will show you later on. The mayor had asked to show what we had requested from the state for reimbursement so far, so we'll talk about that later. And then some other bigger impacts in June, just because of everything that's been going on in the city. So this is where we are. You can see right now we're under budget. I think normally around this time in May, we're usually about $3 million under budget or so. So you gotta remember that this is only through May, so we have the rest of the year to go. So I wouldn't expect an $8 million savings for the whole entire year, but we are a little bit over what we normally would be at this time in any other given year. If that makes sense.
It makes sense. And Amy, if I may just chime in, I wanted to share with council members who weren't here for the ad hoc meeting last week that all of our departments, as you can see, variants and brackets all the way down, all of the departments have really responded well to requests from Amy and myself to watch expenses and to try to put things off if they can, given our projected shortfall. So we really are beginning to see some results from those efforts as well. And so we're really thankful to our team for watching their budgets right now.
Stormwater looks good. I mean, it's about 112,000 over budget in revenues and 563 under budget in expenditures. But some of that's probably timing with projects and things like that. So where we are in our revenue loss projections, sorry. Right now, we're about a $36.7 million loss. We were at 41.1 last month, if you remember. That's where we had projected our loss to be. So we're a little bit under where we were last month. We received a little bit more in hospitality funds than we had expected, but we think that's probably from deferred taxes from February through May that we received. Municipal accommodations is a lot less. We just received April's collections, which was only $62,570. And normally for April, we would receive almost $476,000. So you can see how much of an impact this has on tourism. And then parking's doing a little bit better than we projected with transient parking in the garages and lots, but obviously with on-street parking, it's not recovered very well, and it won't. So our tourism funds, we're still projecting about a $19.2 million loss for all of those funds. We had some current fund balance that we can use, so it's about 15.3 million. State accommodations, we have really nothing to report. I mentioned last time we met that we really won't see any new information until the third quarter, but we did get some information just for your knowledge. In April 2019, we were at $860,000. In April 2020, we were only at $80,000. So we've received about 1.2 million to date, and we've paid out 979,000. And the general fund has covered about $3 million for debt payments, and the payment to the visitor center for the renovation of the visitor center to the CVB. We did send out letters to all our grant recipients to let them know we're not to expect payment and that we will reevaluate in the third quarter, and also not advise them not to plan for grant funds for 2021. Municipal accommodations, you can see in red is 2019, blue is 2020. So right now we're at a cumulative loss about 37% in revenues. This time last year we had collected 2.5 million. Right now we've collected 1. And obviously that's putting an additional strain on our general fund. And with the increasing number of COVID cases, we're not expecting tourism to rebound anytime soon. So we feel like our projections are pretty realistic at this point. Slow me down or stop me if you want. Hospitality, we're still projecting about a $9.1 million loss. We're down cumulatively about 40%. We talked about the general fund and what the strain does and what strain is putting on our general fund as well. And then again, with COVID, restaurants are closing again. We're just not, obviously everything is very uncertain at this time. Enterprise funds, about where we are with all of our facilities, including parking. It's about a $13.8 million loss. We have $4 million in reserves we can use, or fund balance, I'm sorry, not reserves. So $9.8 million loss, plus the $11 million that we have the implied transfer to the general fund when we balance the budget for 2020. All the facilities are open except for the ballpark and the golf course. We're about 900,000 under budget through May. Like I said, visitation is steadily increasing, but you know, everything's uncertain right now with COVID-19. Parking, through May, we are approximately $2.8 million under budget, 28% loss in revenues for on-street parking, 67% since March, and 19% loss in revenue for parking garages through May 31st. We're operating at about 25% every month right now. We had talked about unpaid monthly parking fees last month, which we've pretty much collected all of those, so that's really not an issue for us. And then, you know, the parking fund does have the potential to break even this year, but we have the college as an outlier if they don't start back in the fall. And then we did notice the week the mask ordinance went into effect that our transient parking revenue went down an additional 9%. And so, like I said, we've been operating at about approximately 25%. So we were down 85% that 1 week. So we're watching that, trying to get some more numbers for June from ABM. The general fund, business license, this is just 3.6 million for the general fund overall, with the biggest really is recreation and tourism are probably going to be our biggest outliers there. Business licenses look good, but we just to be on the safe side, because we're not sure how the rest of the year will go, we're being conservative and still budgeting a small loss there, or expecting a small loss. Inspections and fees are slightly above target to date, so we might be okay there. But police, fines, tourism, and recreation all continue to be under budget, and we would expect that for the rest of the year. So savings we already identified, hiring freeze, retirement. Actually, South Carolina retirement suspended employer contribution increase for 1 year, so that's saving us $450,000, and fuel savings potentially $850,000. And all of these will cover the loss in the general fund, but it's not going to cover the implied transfers or the budgeted transfers from the enterprise and tourism funds. Like I said, we had some additional unbudgeted expenses in June. Right now, all of our budget analysts are going through all the departmental budgets to see where we can maybe cut some more costs. And we're meeting with departments to go over those. We've also asked departments to postpone any large expenditures, projects, or initiatives at least through September. And just, I showed this to the ad hoc committee. This was just an interesting bit of information, just exactly where our biggest expenditure is, and that's in personnel, as you will see. So in order to make cuts, it's hard to do that without including personnel in that. So that might be an area we need to consider. So where are we? This is where it might be easier to understand. So right now for our tourism funds, our projected loss for hospitality is 9.1 million. We actually released some funds from projects. We had talked about this, I think, 2 months ago. So these are all of the projects that we released funds, which ends up being 6.9 million. We have fund balance of 2.3 million. So right now it's a positive around $205,000. Municipal accommodations, we're projecting a $5 million loss, and then we released the funds for Market Street and Low Battery, and that's still with those in the fund balance, releasing those funds and the fund balance, we're at a $665,000 loss. And I'm saying that's an effect on the general fund because the general fund is going to have to cover anything that any of these funds cannot pay. State accommodations, a $5 million loss. We're holding 3/4 of the payments to grant subrecipients, which is around $1.7 million. And then obviously we did not have to pay the $10,000 for the 4th of July celebration. Fund balance is $666,000. So we're still at a $2.6 million loss there. But I think we talked about the CVB. We had paid the CVB 2.4 million already out of the general fund. So that's part of that 2.6.
Hey, Amy,
Yes.
under the hospitality fees, where you got this entry for sports wellness at 2 million.
Yep.
That is exactly what project?
That was where we were wanting to put, it was just different sports and wellness complex, but mostly the turfs on the fields.
The
Right.
AstroTurf on that
Right.
Stony Field.
That is, we can release that. Those were set aside because we were supposed to do the NCAA track. And because we aren't doing that, we can't use hospitality fees. And that project is fully funded anyway. So it doesn't need the money.
Okay. I was just making sure I understood what project that was on. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Enterprise funds.
Yeah, Amy, this is
Yeah.
Dudley.
Hi.
You said we're not doing the track? Or
We're
it's
not doing the NCAA track. We are still doing the track. It's just it's not rated.
I got it. I got you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The track will meet high school standards and size, but not college.
I recall now. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, so enterprise fund, just utilizing right now, just the current available fund balances, we're still at that $9.8 million projected loss. And then we also had the $11 million implied transfer to the general fund to balance the budget when we were doing the budget. So really the effect on the general fund is $20.8 million. And there's really nothing we can cut from any of those budgets, projects wise, or, I mean, that's just operating expenses. Any questions on that? Okay. So general fund has a projected loss of 3.6 million. The amount that we'll have to cover from the loss in the tourism funds is 3.1. Enterprise funds plus the implied transfer from the enterprise fund, the total shortfall to the general fund is almost $28 million. We have the $2 million from the hiring freeze. It's $6 million in total. $4 million we already budgeted for. We're expecting it to save us another $2 million. Employer contribution from retirement and then fuel savings. So we're still at about a $24.3 million deficit with all the savings that we've identified so far. Any questions?
So Amy, when you showed that departmental savings that total 8 million and some change, does that play into one of these totals somewhere?
No, because Mayor, we normally are under budget at this point in time. It's just because you got to remember it's a full year that we're looking at. So without actually looking at a budget and saying, okay, we're going to make these cuts, that's the only way that we would be able to identify more savings. So we've done that in some cases, but some of that $8 million you're seeing might be because we were shut down for a couple of months, but it's also because departments haven't done certain things that they would normally do. It's a timing issue as well. And
Right.
because we were shut down, there's some things they're still going to have to do that $8 million isn't really a true absolute savings right now. Because you have to project it out through the whole entire year.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But potentially there's some savings.
Right. And like I said, we're going through with all the departments. And like I said, there's been 2 or 3 departments that have come to us with other ideas too. So we'll get all those together and have that for the next meeting as well.
Gotcha.
Any questions?
Anybody got any questions? Anybody got an extra 24 million sitting on them?
So Amy, this is a difference.
Councilmember Saccharin has got his checkbook out. Yes, sir.
Councilmember Saccharin has arrived.
I've been here for a little bit. Sorry for being late.
Oh, no problem.
Amy, I have a question.
Sure.
So the initial projection was close to 40 million and fund deficit. And I think we talked about a transfer to bring that down to about 30 million. So is that about what I remember early on?
24.
I don't know. I don't know exactly. I don't know if I understand what you mean. We
No,
haven't.
so initially when we started this discussion, we were talking about a $40 million deficit.
Right.
And now with some adjustments, I think that was going to be reduced about close to 30 million. Correct?
So it was
37, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's 37 million. So it went down from 41.1, I think, to 37.9 million, I think is what the.
So now we're projecting 24.
Well, only after we release some funds for projects and some of the savings that we've identified in the general fund. So that's how we did that.
So if I may restate that, we still are seeing or projecting a $37 million shortfall in revenue, but
That's right.
based upon putting things off and some other savings, that the impact just to the general fund itself, which is of highest concern to us, is 24 million. But we still fundamentally have a $37 million
We do.
revenue, right?
We do. We're just cutting because, we have to have a balanced budget. So, our revenues go down, our expenses have to go down too, or we have to make it work somehow. So we're not doing projects. We're putting those projects that we release back into fund balance to help us cover the costs of the losses in the tourism funds. And then, these couple of things that we've done for the general fund, just to reduce the amount of it's still a loss that we have, but we just don't have those funds anymore to pay for things. So we have to try to make cuts where we can. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
And I think what the mayor had said, and listen, I'm asking these questions for the general public who are listening in, so everybody's clear on this as well. And the bottom line is, if we needed Councilmember Saccharin to cut a check, it would be for $24 million.
That's correct.
That would zero out our deficit, even though we're projecting more of a loss in income. With the adjustments that we're able to make, we were able to reduce that down to $24 million. So doing what we can do so far, we're still short $24 million. That's the issue.
That's right. Right now, as of this time, yes, because we don't know what will happen. Maybe it could get better or it could get worse too. We don't know.
That's my next point, and I appreciate you saying that, because with the COVID numbers being what they are, and they seem to be increasing, and more people are getting sick, which may then impact our other revenue source stream. That $24,000 may be higher because of that loss, the other lost sources of income.
Right. So
We
if
just
we
don't
look
know.
at-
We just don't know. But as of the 9th of July, this is where we're projecting right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions at this point? All
So
right,
basically, we just talked about this. The economy is still very uncertain, so we still need to be very conservative and cautious. Yes, Councilmember Waring?
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, instead of maybe being a little bit too hard on Councilman Saccharin, if Congress is working on another stimulus package, Amy, if we were to call our Congress people, the mayor call obviously our delegation, what should we ask for? I mean, I see this $24 million here, but if we were to have a elevated speech where obviously the mayor makes his calls, respective council members make their calls to their close relationships with our congressional delegation and senatorial delegation, what should we ask for so we won't be all over the place?
I would ask for our revenue loss.
Okay, and that number would be?
It's at $37 million or so right now. And I actually have some slides on that later about the stimulus package and the HEROES Act. But
Okay.
that's what I would ask for, because we're having to use fund balance and we're having to cut projects out and everything in order to try to make everything work. And, we need our fund balances. We're lucky we have fund balances.
Correct.
And so we'll need to build those back up. So I would ask for what we're projecting in revenue loss.
Okay, thank you so much for that, because I think we need to be in unison in what we say once we get off this call, because obviously if they're putting something together up there, hopefully for local governments across this country, they're going to want to hear from us, or we should be reaching out to them, but that message should be consistent. So thank you for that, Amy.
no, we should be reaching out to them, and I think Amy has a slide in a minute with more detail, and I'll come back to you, and maybe Rick will too, because he has some specific information on this.
Good deal. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Saccharin had his hand up a minute ago.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question. Councilmember Waring, I was going to ask, that was the question I was asking, if we had identified any federal support coming down the way. So that was my first question. The second question is, as a new council member, have we ever been in this financial situation as a city in short, just the short term, past 10, 15, 20 years that
Never.
you recall?
We've never been in this situation.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Brady.
Yeah, I just had a quick question, actually to touch on something that Councilmember Waring has touched on before. Is there any, if we looked at restructuring some of our debt or getting lower rates, with any savings on that we could do in the short term, help us against the deficit that we're currently?
So we did just refinance one, and we do have our financial advisors that are looking at, they look at them all the time for us, and they come and they recommend, and we were talking about the stormwater bond. Maybe that would be a potential, but there's some caveats to that. We can talk about that another time if you'd like, but whether we would do that October this year or October of next year might give us more savings if we did it next year, but then there's risk in that. So we are talking with them a lot about that.
Okay, thank you.
We just, our debt is so much smaller than water systems that it's, our savings is never as much as theirs. But anyway, they are looking at it. They know to look at it for us.
Councilmember Jackson.
I was just going to ask Ms. Wharton, are you going to speak later to the short-term loan you were telling us about last week?
Yes. So anyway, just to keep in mind that these are through the end of the year. So we're still have some cash flow issues because we won't recognize those savings immediately. It'll be slowly over time, over each month. So when Councilmember Jackson just mentioned about the tax anticipation note we will have to get, that's why, because we're not recognizing these savings immediately. It's over time and we're still getting into a cash flow issue. So here we are, cash flow, cash is king and every dollar matters. So we're projecting right now that will get tight in September. You will see on the agenda a tax anticipation note for up to $40 million. I'm working with our bond counsel and financial advisor on this now, but we're projecting between October and December, expenditures will exceed revenues coming in by $35 million. So that's why we're saying up to 40 million right now. Like I said, we haven't departments asked them to slow their spending, and we're still looking at cost cutting measures. Some of the things that we talked about ad hoc was some strategies to slow the flow of cash, which is a hiring freeze, which we've already implemented. A voluntary part-time status is another option we could provide to our employees, which might be welcome to them now with the COVID and daycare issues. Voluntary time off for employees, it's unpaid, and then there's mandatory time off, which would be a furlough, which we talked about this a little bit with, well, actually a lot with ad hoc last week. So I put the numbers in there for how much it would save us. 20-hour furlough for the general fund would be 1 million, and the enterprise fund is 32.3. So they're not huge savings to us, but like we said, every dollar matters at this point. You want to just look at that for a second if you have any questions.
Amy,
Yes.
the on the furlough, and you've got in here, this is all city employees. How do those numbers break down if we took sworn out?
Oh, it would be pretty, I mean, they'd be really low if we took sworn out of there. You would have to include all in city employees. Every single city employee would have to be included in this.
Yeah, but when you got these 20 and 40 and 80 hour breakdowns, you got 32.3 and 64.7 and 129. How does that break down if you take sworn out?
I can't do that calculation for you, but I can tell you that it would be minimal savings to us if we took sworn out of it. They're our biggest payroll expense, so.
It would probably just cut it in half roughly.
It'd probably be more than half, Mayor.
More than half, maybe 60%. Councilmember Griffin.
Amy, do you see a scenario in the current climate of where we're at today where we could balance this budget without doing a furlough?
No. Mm-mm.
Well, I would just add that it would be very dependent upon what Congress does, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute.
That's right. If a stimulus came through, then we would be absolutely fine.
Well, I'm more, that would be a blessing, but I think we have got to act like we're not going to get that, so I'm just.
Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm acting like we're not going to get it because
right.
I just can't count on that at all. So.
But apparently, and do you have a particular thought on that, Amy, on the CARES Act?
I do.
Well,
So,
I'll just wait till you get there and we'll talk some more about that if that's okay. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amy, back to the furloughs. If we do the tax anticipation note and the amount of 40 million, we still need to do the furlough?
well, that's just covering that. That's a good question. Because we have to pay that tax anticipation note. So you really need to cut expenses as much as we can. So the reason why we're asking departments we're trying to get better numbers on what we might be able to cut back from the departments and then see what we might be able to use from our fund balance to see if that we won't need to do that. But we would have to cut even more next year to be able to pay back the tax anticipation note.
Yeah, I understand that. So hypothetically, we do this TAN. You see us receiving that money when? October? Somewhere up in there?
September, yes.
September, October. Okay, so if we've forecasted 6 months from that point, into the next fiscal year, hopefully, prayerfully, I should say, our economy should be a little stronger than it is right now. As far as we'll know more about the virus, we'll be closer to, we have hopefully better treatment protocols and maybe even closer to a vaccine. But we'd still be 6 months away from, I guess, maturity of the note. So we'll have a little bit more time to cut, basically, as opposed to cutting now. I'd like to try to use the TAN as a bridge to get to hopefully, March of next year, maybe April of next year, and then see how our revenues are running. I mean, we still have some time, before the maturity of the TAN. So anyway, that's I'm thinking about that piece right now. I just, boy, I know none of us, including you, want to do these furloughs, but I'm just thinking if we can maybe push these cuts off once we receive the TAN, into maybe March or so of next year, see what the revenues are looking like. And then obviously, and we'll know by that time whether we got anything from the Congress for local governments. We'll know a heck of a lot more by March of next year than we know today. So the good part about it, TAN, is bridging. Basically, it bridges you hopefully for a little bit better day in this case. Anyway.
So you get your property taxes and then you pay it off.
Right.
So that's what, anyway.
So you see the TAN being out there how long? 6 months or 12 months?
You have to pay it back within a year, but I would want to pay it off faster than that. Once we get our property taxes, and we should pay it off.
Expand on that part.
Well,
what would be the advantage of paying it off in 6 months versus 12?
Okay, so then we're going to get into, unless we make the cuts that we need to make, then we're going to be in a cash flow issue again,
Right.
because we have the property taxes to cover us to the end of the year. So that's why I'm trying to say, like, this isn't money that we can just, we really have to still make a lot of cuts next year. Otherwise, we're going to be right back in the same situation where we're borrowing money to get us through the end of the year again.
I hear you on that, but hopefully this time next year, I would hope, not this time next year, but certainly by March, maybe April of next year, if the economy is the same, then we got to make the hard choices and make the cuts. If business license revenue is a little bit up, if H-tax revenue is a little bit up compared to today, we've still got a little bit better economy that we're going to be looking at than what we're currently looking at today.
Well, business licenses will not be higher next year because it will be based on this year's income. So we will definitely see
You're right.
business license revenue next year. But anyway, we would have to make these cuts during our 2021 budget when we're putting this budget together in order to be able to be whole next year.
Okay. All right. I hear you. Thank you.
It's not fun, I know. So then the other thing is just making acceptable reductions in service levels. We had talked about. So then this is what the mayor was talking about with the HEROES Act and possible relief for us. This is a letter that the mayor received from the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which I'm going to send to you along with the monthly report so that you have it. But they're asking that while the senators are home during the July Senate recess from July 6th to the 20th, that we all contact them to support this. So right now it's 187.5 billion over a 2-year period for local governments. And the estimated calculation that the U.S. Conference of Mayors has is 39.7 million in 2020 for the city of Charleston and 19.8 million in 2021. So if we were to receive those funds, that would help preserve our fund balances for sure and our level of service to our citizens. So we should all be reaching out to our senators in support of this as much as we possibly can in any way we can, and even encourage citizens and business owners to do it as well.
Can we get a copy of that letter, please?
Yeah, I'm going to send it to you with the monthly report so that you have it.
Thank you, Amy.
Amy, can I just comment a little bit about this? This is in the House passed bill, which was a trillion bill. The Senate is supposedly, they claim they will pass a bill this month as well. Their bill right now, they say that they do not want to spend more than $1 trillion, and they're not talking about any state and local relief. But I think when talking to our lobbyists in DC, they think that the Senate is ultimately going to have to come up with some kind of relief for state and local government. So the payout on the first year payment under this bill was for local governments would be within 30 days of enactment. So Congress wants to do something before they go out for recess in August. So if they include some state and local revenue relief funding, we would get that money in September of this year.
So,
Mr. Mayor?
that would be yes, Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, I just, maybe the next slide will say it, but what is the formula for the 39.7 and the 19.8? Did we get to nominate that?
No, it's a modified CDBG formula. So it's based on what we currently, they've taken the CDBG formula in the House bill and modified that to provide the funds for municipalities.
That's great, thanks.
So the Conference of Mayors, for example, did a calculation for all the towns in South Carolina. It's a long list. And it's kind of ironic that the number works out for Charleston to be right about where our projected revenue shortfall is. So it goes hand in hand with what Amy was saying a little bit ago. If Congress would fund our revenue shortfall, it basically comes up to what the House is proposing. And so this has already passed the House. So the two people that we can contact to make a difference on this is Senator Graham and Senator Scott. It's got to go to the Senate as soon as they get back off of the July recess that they're on right now. And gee, even if they met the House in the middle somewhere and we got a good percentage of this, what's proposed, it would be so helpful to us to meet that general fund $24 million shortfall. So I would urge all my fellow colleagues here on council and citizens as well to contact our two U.S. senators and urge them to include local government relief in this HEROES Act that they'll be talking about as soon as they get back up there.
And this was just the part of, I just extrapolated this a little bit with the calculation that they had come up with.
Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along those lines, and I think it's very important that we activate politically to do whatever we can to convince our friends in DC to do the right thing here and help local governments all over the country that are in similar dire straits due to no fault of their own. And the people that this is going to impact the most are our first responders, our police officers, our firefighters, things of that nature. That's what local government does first and foremost. And there's a lot of talk about supporting these folks and these heroes. But this is where, the rubber meets the road right here. And I had a quick question for Rick. Rick, what is sort of the political dynamic about this? How has this become a political football? I mean, I've got my intuition, but I wanted to kind of see what your thoughts were on this. So in our advocacy, we could perhaps take some of that intel and help, tailor our message and modify our approach strategically.
Well, I mean, I think House members are closer to local levels of government than senators. I mean, senators represent the whole state and House members represent districts that are more attuned to local issues. So, I mean, I think the House is pushing for state and local relief. The Senate is going to be pushing primarily for liability protection for small businesses that have been impacted by the COVID-19. And so you can see the makings of a compromise there. That liability protection is not in the House bill, but it will be in the bill that Senator McConnell is developing. The White House has committed to spending it. They say they don't want to spend more than $1 trillion. The president's saying that, and the Senate's saying that right now. But then you got the Secretary of the Treasury saying we're going to have to come somewhere between $1 trillion and $3 trillion, which was in the House bill. So I think the makings of a compromise are there. I think comments I'm hearing from the senators and through our lobbyists is they think they helped local levels of government when they gave money to the state in the last stimulus bill. And the counter argument to that is that those dollars were basically for COVID related expenses. The cities and towns have lost a lot of revenue because of the impact of COVID-19 that are not directly related to COVID related expenses. And that's where the House needs to help. And hopefully the Senate will come along and to some degree to that argument.
And Rick, that last pool of COVID money only went to the bigger counties, correct? Because Greenville County was the only one in South Carolina to even get any of that money.
That's absolutely correct, Councilman. The states got it, and counties of above a certain population level got some direct funding, and Charleston County was just below that level. That's correct.
But the state did get the $1.9 billion, and it went through the legislature. And I think this is what Amy's going to talk about next. Like, if we bought a mask, we can get reimbursed for it. But if we didn't collect $1 because nobody's staying in a hotel or eating in a restaurant, or their business is down, we can't apply for that dollar through this prior CARES Act. So that's why this new legislation is so important for us to cover loss, some percentage, even if it's not the total amount the House proposed, some good percentage of our lost revenue. It's so critical to us. Amy, if you don't mind covering this next part.
Sure. So this is what we had applied originally. Mayor, I just did not include the loan part of it in here. I just did our direct expenses. So what we had applied for reimbursement from the state, or at least send in to them that these were what our expenses were. We've had additional costs since then, and will continue to. We just purchased another large order of masks. We had to do some deep cleaning of some of our facilities and things like that we're still tracking. So this number will increase, but right now this is where we are so far, with obviously the biggest of that being payroll. So I don't know if you have any questions. So we're just waiting to hear. I know they said that I have to attend some type of training for it. I have not received any information on that yet. So as soon as I know more about that, then I will let you know.
We'll apply for every penny of extra expense that we can reasonably, assign or ascribe to COVID-related expense. But you can see it's like right now, $2.3 million, and we're looking at a shortfall of $37 million in revenue. So that's just accentuates the point I was making a minute ago.
Right, and these are unbudgeted expenses too that we didn't anticipate. So it only makes it worse. So if we could get reimbursed, that's great, because every dollar matters. But our revenue loss is our biggest issue. So, and just to talk about our 2021 budget, where we are. So obviously there's going to need to be a lot of assumptions made for 2021. Our department's budgets are due tomorrow. So we should be able to start working on all of those. Healthcare and workers' comp budgets will go in August. We will go through all the departmental requests and meet with ad hoc at the August meeting. Meetings with department heads will be in September with the ad hoc committee, and then we have to have the budget to you by November 17th, the draft budget, and then it will go for approval in December. And then that's really all I had. If anybody has any further questions.
Mayor, this is Dudley.
Yes, sir.
This is kind of related. Do we anticipate another stay-at-home order from the governor, or we're going to be an outlier and do it ourselves?
Well, I'm hoping we'll see some additional restraints from that will be statewide, but I don't think they will be anything near a quote stay-at-home order or essential businesses like we had before.
Even though things are worse than that?
What's that?
I said, even though things are worse today than they were then when we put in place the last stay-at-home order.
That's just my belief at this point. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. All right. Any other questions? Councilmember Shade.
Yeah, I mean, I think in what Councilmember Gregory was referring to, and I think this is just a realistic concept of all of this. Whatever number we're looking at as a shortfall, it's probably going to get worse. I just can't imagine where these numbers are right now that we're going to see us or other sources of income being steady. I see more loss of income coming in. I hope I'm wrong on that. I hope I'm dead wrong on that, but I just think that we have to brace ourselves for a larger increase in lost revenue. And then we start looking at, and we mentioned this at our workshop earlier, when we look at 2021, and we have to look at that really soon, our money coming in, particularly for business license fees, will be down. We know that's going to be down. And so we have no idea where this virus is going to be heading into 2021. And I think that's just a reality we have to be facing ourselves. I think we need to be conservative. I think we need to be somewhat pessimistic as well as to where our stream of income is going to look like for 2021. And I think that's the message our department heads are understanding. So it's a grim outlook. I mean, it truly is a grim outlook. And we're going to have some very difficult decisions to make in this budget process come November and December.
Well, absolutely. And I will say that the projections that Amy and our team have done are for the year. And I believe they were done conservatively. She feels, as she stated earlier in the presentation, that she thinks our projections are good still at this point. Otherwise, she'd recommend changes to them, I'm sure. So I agree with Councilmember Griffin and Amy's response that we have to treat our situation realistically. I guess the timing of the congressional action being within hopefully the next few weeks, I guess the way I view it is we're very realistic in our projections. We should lobby for the next 10 days and hopefully we'll see some relief by Congress in August before they take their longer recess. But frankly, if we don't get relief from action from them in the next 30 days, and with all due respect, Councilmember Waring, to your remarks about the tax anticipation note, I think we need to go ahead and start making some hard choices for the remainder of this year. We may have the cash because we borrowed money, but it's not going to change our budget revenue and expenditures. So again, I'm an optimistic guy, and I'm hopeful that Congress will give us some relief here in the next few weeks. But if that doesn't work out, we've got to go ahead and start making some choices. Councilmember Waring.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Listen, I agree with the reality that we're facing right now. So But let me say this. If we were to go back to February, the country, as well as we, February and March, things were crashing, in particular March. And this is why. There were no answers out there. Congress had yet to step up. The Federal Reserve had yet to step up. And the science on this was trying to play catch up. Look at where we are today. As a matter of fact, the stimulus packages, 2, have already been passed. Yeah, do we need more? We need more. But you know what? The Treasury knows what to do. Easy money is being put forth by the Federal Reserve Board. Rates have, I don't know, possibly never been lower. I think last time I looked today, the 10-year bond was 0.60%. The Mnuchin, the head of the Federal Reserve Board, they have done and still know what to do to try to keep this economy afloat. Without that, we'd be in a depression by now. Frankly, if you look at the stimulus package after the Great Recession when President Obama came in, it was just under $800 million. This economy has been funded with, how much has it been, Rick? Is it $3 or $4 trillion in the last 2 stimulus packages? But for those stimuli, we would be in a depression. So we have an active Federal Reserve Board. We have an active Congress. We will know a whole lot more in September than we know today. We are 5-6 months into medical research on this. Treatment protocols are already getting better. The professionals always said it would take 15 months to 2 years to come up with a vaccine on this. We've had AIDS, Ebola, SARS, MERS, swine flu, bird flu. Vaccines were discovered and treatment protocols for all of them. And we'll find that this country or another will find the science on that to cure this virus as well. So I see the next 6 months as not being as dire, frankly, as the last 6 months, because we have answers to a lot of those things that we were hoping would happen or guessing would happen at the time. We didn't know what the Federal Reserve Board was going to do, or the Treasury was going to do, or the Congress, or the Senate, or even if the president would sign. Now that's in the rearview mirror. So we have between, or they have between now and the first Tuesday in November. And I just find it very difficult to say that they're not going to do anything between now and November, or all of them will be on the hot seat. So I'm encouraged going forward. I think things are going to get better moving forward. And I appreciate Mr. Mayor, you and Amy and all her financial team for pulling out the realities. It's just the realities that we're facing right now. That's all. So, and there are going to be answers to those realities, financial answers to those realities. So, because of the information provided, we are now better equipped as stewards of the city. The mayor and all 12 council people can fan out and give this similar message. We got an elevator speech now, ladies and gentlemen, to go forward and speak to Senator Grimm and speak to Senator Scott about. And I mean, we got people here that have known these people 20 plus years. So if we don't make the call, shame on us, because our people, meaning the citizens of Charleston, dependent on us to make it. So we got better days in front of us. The bad days are in the rearview mirror. Isn't that right, Amy?
Yeah.
No,
All right.
She's smiling. She's smiling. She's laughing.
I know, we got a smile out of her. All right.
Councilmember Griffin.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You know, I'm watching this whole furlough thing very closely because, you know, it would be nice if we could offer, if anybody had to get furloughed, that they could get that extra $600. I don't know how much longer that I think that they may end up extending that a little bit longer, but I know we talked about voluntary leave as well. You know, it would be nice if the people that did end up having to go home without pay had at least an opportunity to get some unemployment. So I think that, you know, the sooner the better that we can sort of sit down and decide what we have to do on that, because if people do have to go home without any pay, there would at least be an opportunity there in the next few weeks that might not be there 6 months from now. My other thing is, I'm just wondering, I know we've been very, very giving in the past, especially to nonprofits and other organizations within the city. My guess is we're not really going to be able to do that much next year at all. Have we sort of let a lot of those nonprofits and other community partners know that they're probably not going to be getting any funding from us next year?
We sent them letters and let them know that we would not be providing that for next year.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You're always ahead of the game, Amy. You're spot on always.
Councilman Griffin, to your point, Rick, if they're going to extend the unemployment insurance, again, they would include that in this next stimulus bill as well. That's one of the issues that will be, that will be resolved before Congress goes out in August. So we'll know pretty quickly whether or not that, because it expires the end of this month.
Right.
And so we'll know pretty quickly whether that's going to be extended or not.
We just have to keep watching it, because all of those things, play into our decision making. And if they do extend it, maybe that's a good time to offer voluntary leave and see if people take it, and then they can go home and make a little bit of money. But, anything we can do to help and try to be congruent with whatever Congress does, I'm totally on board, and y'all have my support on what's best for our city, and definitely our employees have just been so rock steady through all of this.
Councilmember Jackson.
Right. To that point, I really feel like Senator Graham needs a lot of understanding. We need to share our insights with him about extending the $600 unemployment coverage. So I think it would be a really good opportunity for him to understand from our perspective.
Well, that's true. But my number one pitch to both senators is going to be about funding local government shortfalls. All the other CARES Act included funding for states, for large municipalities over 500,000, for individuals, for businesses, but local governments under 500,000 have been left out of the equation thus far, and this is the time for them to include us.
Mr. Mayor?
Agree. Totally.
Councilmember Gregory?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm in full support of everything that we've said thus far with respect to the economy. But my bigger concern has to do with our numbers in terms of cases and deaths, and being compared to Italy being now looked at as a global hot spot, which I think is going to have an unbelievable effect on our economy. And I think that we may be well into this mid-year because we're now on the national news. We're now being compared. For me, it's unbelievable. So I'm in full support of trying to make sure that our economy and our budgets balance, et cetera, But my bigger concern is as we do this, okay, our numbers are going way up. So I'm even more concerned about what are we going to do? And I'm not talking about as a state, okay? What are we going to do? What is Charleston going to do as a large city to try to make sure that we protect lives, especially in the vulnerable population. So I'm in full agreement with trying to get as much money as we can to keep this economy going. But I'm just as concerned about how the numbers, okay, are going, especially in Charleston County, and are being compared with not other cities, but other countries
Well,
For me, I think that I got my mask, Mayor. I understand the mask wearing, but I also think that we as a city need to get more enforcement in that regard. Because remember, it was 3 outlier council members who thought that it was very important rules and regulations in place for our restaurants, of which the consensus said that they would voluntarily comply. We know that that's really not happening. So what I'm talking about, Mayor, yes, wear the mask. Let's do the distance, but let's also make sure that our emergency measures include much harder and more enforceable regulations with respect to mask wearing, as opposed to what's going on in these bars. The spread in our county is rampant, and African Americans are 3 times more likely, okay, to die from this thing. So I'm all fine for the economy, but I also think that we need to start putting some more emergency measures in place to save lives. Just had to say that for the record, Mayor. Thank you.
I heard you, and we'll be discussing this further, as you know, on our agenda Tuesday night. I got up yesterday, I share all of that concern with you and everyone. I got up yesterday and read the article in the New York Times that showed Arizona, then Florida, then South Carolina as having the 3 worst rates in the nation, and compared to countries in the world, we're worse off than most every other country as well. So I called the governor yesterday and I said, you know, Governor, we used to say, thank God for Mississippi, because they were always behind us on whatever list. And I said, thank God for Arizona and Florida this morning, because the numbers are alarming. Now, having said that, I will point out, as far as Charleston County and the city go, I'm not trying to sugarcoat this, but a lot of these numbers are reported as in terms of percentages, percentage increase. And so because we really did a great job in April and May in keeping our numbers down, now that we're kind of normal, what I call gross numbers, total numbers, like other counties and cities, our population, our percentage increase looks even worse. So I think that's been a factor on some of those reports that we've been seeing. But again, not to sugarcoat it, the numbers are unacceptable, and I hope the governor's going to take some additional statewide action soon, and then we'll have to discuss Tuesday on what additional measures that we feel appropriate as a city. There was someone who had raised their hand.
That was me, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Shade, and then back to Waring.
And I just wanted to echo what Councilmember Gregory was mentioning. He's right on point with all of this. And hopefully on our Tuesday discussion, we will come up with some more creative measures to deal with bar closings or curfews or other ideas on narrowing down this number. I mean, the numbers are the numbers, and they are what they are. I mean, we can't sugarcoat what those we're dealing with. And I'd hate to sound too pessimistic, and I'm not trying to be the person throwing water on our enthusiasm with all of this, but I think we're just going to have to be realistic of where we are health-wise in our community. And it's just the numbers are not very promising, and it is going to have an impact on our budget, and it is going to have an impact on our revenue for the rest of this year. And that's just a stark reality of that. I mean, I'm grateful that what Councilmember Waring is mentioning and what we need to do with our own homework and getting our elected federal officials to face the reality with all this. I think that's a wonderful idea, and we need to be doing that. Every one of us need to be making phone calls, sending letters and emails, and running these guys down. Because it's always the cities and the counties who catch the brunt of an economic downfall turn, And we are unable to print money. I mean, that's the reality of it. We're unable to print money. The federal government can. They can loosen money for us and get us out of this hole in 10 seconds if they wanted to. So I hope that's what happens. But I think that the concerns that we all have from a health perspective is something we need to keep in mind regularly. And we're going to have to make some tough decisions, as Councilmember Gregory is mentioning, as what we need to do to go forward. This is just July. Things may get better by September and October or November. I just don't know. But I think where we are right now and the economic forecast that Amy has given us is where we are and what we have to contend with.
Absolutely. Councilmember Waring.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I agree with everything certainly has been said. And you're right, Councilman Gregory. 29403 is certainly getting a hot spot. I drove through there today and I had my mask on when I was driving. But anyway, I had a suggestion, Mr. Mayor, from a person in the business community. I'm trying to think who was now, and when I do, I'll certainly give them credit. But wondering if we should do something by way of ordinance where businesses would have the position of, listen, you can't come in here until you put a mask on. Costco's like that. Now that's certainly volunteer, but whatever we can do from the city standpoint to encourage businesses to acquiesce to the policy of when you come in to shop or whatever, you put on a mask. Because it's going to be it is kind of difficult for how many, who's the officers, Mr. Riccio, how many people work for Mr. Riccio? About 11 or 12?
Yes, sir.
Going around trying to encourage. But I tell you, if we can give businesses or even give them credit, kudos, highlight them for having like the Costco's do. If you don't have a mask, they have one there to give you. To help slow the spread of the virus. So anyway, I don't know whether between now and Tuesday's meeting, whether we can give that a little bit more thought on how we could encourage that on behalf of our business community, joining in with the city with social distancing and certainly wearing a mask to stop the spread. So anyway, I thought I would throw that out.
Right, thank you. And Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members, I agree with everything that was said, even with the budget wise, and furloughing is something I don't too much care about, but if you have to do it, you have to do it. But dealing with the virus part of it, I live on King Street and I drive King Street. On Friday and Saturdays, you can see lines out there trying to get into the bars and restaurants. No mask at all. And that's Friday and Saturday. That was Wednesday also. And it's nothing but young people. And what I'm saying, they're moving around, going different places, other places, getting in contact with other individuals. And if they're passing this thing around, we haven't seen nothing yet. So even with the businesses, why are they letting them in there without a mask on? You have Food Line and most of some of the other stores. If you don't have a mask on, you can't even come into the store. They'll tell you, they have someone at Food Line standing outside the door and telling you you cannot enter without a mask.
I've heard that at Publix as well.
And Publix is doing it, a lot of stores are doing it. But with these bars, some of the bars and restaurants, they're not abiding by that. They're letting people coming in droves. And they're young people, but the young people go other places and they're spreading it around a lot of different places. And this thing this pandemic going to be more than we think it is, because young people travel around more than the older folks like Mr. Mayor. He might not go too many places. So
not anymore.
So you know what I'm saying? So the young people go all these places and they might be carriers of this particular virus. So
I think that's exactly what's happening. And that's indicative from the reports we're getting from the medical university. Even when we drill down on the demographics of 29403 and Councilmember Gregory, I totally concur that if you get the disease, the prevalence of impact to African Americans is significantly higher But I saw a breakdown the other day that 80% of the new cases in 29403 were whites who were aged 20 to 40. So it's definitely a factor, exactly what you're describing, Councilmember Mitchell.
You can see what I'm saying, Mr. Mayor, is that you have the people on the public housings, back to, Gatson Green, East Side, so those are the young people that's in that particular area. And they travel around too, along with the other area with the young people around. So this is going to spread wide. That's why they have the 29403 zip code is the highest number right now they're talking about. And these are the areas which is the 29403 zip code. Is right where I live from Mount Pleasant Street coming on down on King. So all this is a 29403 zip code. So people are traveling over in all these different directions and they're spreading it around. And then the peninsula right here in the city, we're gonna be in a real trouble. We might can't even go outside if this keep it up. So we have to look at this very seriously and get with these businesses and letting them know. I know some of the businesses are getting angry because they're conforming to what we ask. Then you have the other businesses are not, and they're getting angry and say, well, why are we doing it and they're not doing it? So it might have to put a hefty fine on the business if we're not doing it some way. We have to come up with some kind of mechanism to let them know this is serious and that we are serious because we are trying to save lives and have their business open so they can keep operating, but we're still trying to save life and a healthy of a health safety problem also,
I hear you 100%. Absolutely. All right, we will, if you have any additional ideas on what we've just been discussing, council members, please contact myself or Susan Herdenia because we're still, it's a work in progress. Any further business? Councilmember Ware.
Mr. Mayor, this has nothing to do with the budget, so I don't know whether I should call you after this, but I'd like to have something added to our city's council agenda. So legal may kick me off this call, so maybe I need to call you on the other side.
Just give me a call right after I'm available.
All right, great, because I'm getting ready to jump off because I'm gonna run up to county council to speak in favor of this money for the park up there down 61. Mr. Mayor, you spoke about it, as well as the money for out on Johns Island for the 10 acres that hopefully they'll support for that as well. So any councilman on this call, if y'all want to join up at county council today, that they're going to consider the green space appropriations 5 o'clock today.
So I can't make the meeting, but Councilmember Waring, if you will call me on your way up there, I do want to share something with you about that too.
Okay, good deal. I'll certainly do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Waring, also support the study of the North Bridge for bike and pedestrian travel.
Yeah, I'm on that. I'm on that too. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anything else to come before us this afternoon? If not, y'all have a good weekend. Continue to wear and promote wearing a mask, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
All right, thank you.
Call your senators.
That's right.
All right, thank y'all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.